A bunch of you popped in. Feel free to say hi in the chat box. I'd love to welcome you in as well. So always a little boost and a pleasure to come off of a live weekend. For those of you guys that don't know, we ran our Intuitive Mind live 2-day intensive this past weekend. If you haven't been to these events, I strongly urge that you come. I mean, they are really a special experience. I think we've held, 22, 23 of these events now over the last 3 years. We make micro adjustments as we go, and I consistently feel like they are just becoming more potent, more powerful. Certainly my one and only wish is always that we have more of you guys there to experience it, because in a lot of ways it is like a taste of the new earth. It's more than a taste, it's a big gulp of the new earth. It really widens the view for me every time we run the event too, because I'm always learning as well, and it's the energy that's there, it's what calls forth from the people, and the kind of like the individualistic systems and the group systems, and what the even pull out of Elon and I seems to change with every event. And I really want to say it's like taking the aperture of reality and of possibility and of healing and transformation, and it just widens it. And there's something, in my opinion, that's really special that happens when we believe in the potentiality of something, right? Pretty much, we could probably argue this a little bit, but everything that's ever happened on this planet is generated through our intention and will, right? Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, these intentions could also be unconscious. They could be subconscious. They could be conscious, right? Like there's all these really intricate layers into how it is that we perceive our reality. For example, I spent most of the weekend with a low-grade fever and not feeling my physically best, which I've been at events before we've started because a lack of sleep the night before from being nervous or whatever it is, just not being, fully energized. Although once you generally click into a space of awareness, you find a lot of resource, I find. But I've never gone into an event sick before. And the irony of that was about beginning of March, I remember my wife having a conversation with someone on the phone just at that point in time saying, hey, our kids made it through the winter without really being sick, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, oh, Mandy, you don't say things like that. And within days, and a few days before we were about to travel to Utah, our little one, or our big one got sick, and then our little one got sick. And the whole 5 days we spent on this family vacation with my parents and my brother and his family, my little one was with a fever and not sleeping well. And so, for new parents or parents with a young child, you don't sleep well to begin with, nevertheless, when the child is sick. And so that repeated about 2 weeks later, same exact cycle. And then my dad asked me on Thursday, how am I doing? And I said, great. Kids have been sick. They're just getting through it now. And then I paused because I wanted to say, and I got through it without being sick as well. And then I said the thing, even though part of me was like, don't say that thing. And 5 hours later, a sore throat began, which was kind of funny in its own right. Nuisance, but kind of funny. And I'm in this place in my own interpersonal work where I realize meeting anything with resistance is it's just kind of an utter waste of time. And if you look through your own life, whatever has arisen as a challenge, an opportunity, those are kind of the same, by the way. It just really depends on what frame you're looking through. So when something arises as a problem or a challenge, AKA opportunity, it's often met with discomfort in the system. And that's often met with pushback from our system. Now that could be mental pushback, but with mental pushback always comes energetic pushback as well. And so speaking of the event, it's one of these things that when you see something you've never seen before, a novelty, when you experience something you've never experienced before, which I would say for 99.9% of people that come to this event who haven't been deeply involved in our work for a long time, and it really is their first go around in exploring this incredible area of human awareness and human potentiality in such a new and novel way for them. It's like it's almost like I don't want to say it's a discovery, it's a remembrance of an aspect of yourself that long ago went to sleep and was forgotten. Most of us maybe had a taste of that a little bit when we were children, but given by the constraints of how society is certainly set up, by the conditioning of our parents, our societies, our religious, our backgrounds, our cultures, a lot of those gifts are stripped away pretty early on. And I would say that most people I meet, I include myself in this, and having young children, I'm now seeing this in them as well. You know, those first 1 to 4, 1 to 5 years, there's just not a lot of recall in what our experience was really like. And so we really don't remember a time where we were in tune with ourselves, in tune with our body, where we were energetically aware, where we were really sensitive to our environment, to our parents' energy and stuff like that. And then we are 5 years old and we just think, oh, this is just the way I was. This is just the way the world is. And the reality, as I can tell from all this investigation over 21 years, is that there really is no way that we are. There is no human nature. There's nature, and there's our relationship to it and how we understand that relationship. And we can call that human nature, but human nature often feels like, when we say that, it's something solid, like we understand ourselves so well. And we go, oh yeah, you know, that's just humans doing humans. And we normally say that in negative connotations, right? Like that's like such a human thing to do. Rarely do we say, when like a fireman runs into a burning building and saves a family or children or whatever, go, oh, that's just human nature, you know, which is also, by the way, a possibility and potentiality of human nature. And so I just want to kind of explore some ideas with you guys today. And again, I want to offer that coming to the event is one of these experiences that for most people that attend, it's so novel that it really opens up a realm of potentiality and possibility that they simply didn't know was available to them. And once somebody cracks that door or that window open for you, and you get to peer through it and take a look and even have a direct experience with it, you immediately have a target out there in your future that, even if you don't have that alive and real in your life all the time, at least you know, hey, there's this thing out there, and if I want to pursue it, there is this community, these guys, these people that are pointing me towards this path and showing me where it is. And if I continue to walk down this path, I will find a type of transformation, a type of healing, and a type of human liberation that I believe currently most people on this planet don't even know is available to them, certainly haven't tasted it. And to be a person that comes to that understanding and that experience now and begins to commit themselves to that path and to work on their spiritual essence in order to, again, to heal, to liberate, this is a tremendous act. And so if you haven't been to an event, or you have been to an event, just so you know, the next one, we're going to give you a lot of runway, is June 29th and 30th. If you join any of our L1, L2, L3 programs, we include it in. But if for any reason you're not in those programs, it's beyond your means or beyond your level of commitment at this point in time, the 2-day event is as good as it gets. You can go to intuitivemind.live, intuitivemind.live, to register yourself. It also comes with a companion ticket for a friend or a colleague or a family member if you want to join. And by all means, please go get that. And there is a opportunity for you to save even 50% on your first enrollment by using the coupon code HALF50, HALF50. We'll take 50% off. Okay. And I'd say get in there as soon as possible. And it's for a variety of reasons. The first is you are going to get instant replays to a previous program. So you can actually start going through the work in the program well before you get there. The second aspect of that, so you have immediate value. So you have this ticket in hand, but you also have a digital course that comes along with that. So you can actually start going through the work now, which in my opinion will enhance your live experience when you're there. Because if you have a basis and foundation for the work that we're doing, when you get there, it can amplify greatly. There's a reason we've had people come to this event over 10 times, over 15 times, over 20 times. They don't come for the content. They come for the healing experiences that are there, which can only be done in a group work setting, because there's a certain awareness that opens up and becomes available in terms of the amount of energy that's there. And especially the more people in our community that have done this work, the greater the impact seems to be on new people as they enter the space. I know when I first started doing work like this for me interpersonally, I had been meditating for a long, long time, and I would come into a group, feel the people that had the intention to heal, consciousness, really profound teachers that can transmit teachings that they have had come through them, which Elon and I, of course, do, which our community is doing as well. And you'll suddenly find yourself closing your eyes and going into extremely deep states of meditation very rapidly. And that's the impact of the group field. And then you'll go home and you're like, how come I can't taste that state again? And it's because you now have to develop that within yourself. You have to continue to commit to what we call glimpsing. That's what meditation really is. It's a practice of glimpsing a state. And it's a state beyond the mind. It's an actual direct experience that you're having within your conscious awareness. And what we do is we point you to those states so that you're aware of them as you arrive at them, and then you can enhance them by revisiting them over and over again, just like doing a workout. You keep exercising that muscle, the muscle gets stronger. You keep bringing your awareness to awareness, and awareness gets stronger as well. People think awareness is is something that you comprehend or a state of wisdom, and there may be an element of truth to that when we're just strictly talking about what the mind can do and what the mind can perceive. And there's a realm well beyond that where awareness is actually distinct from mind. The mind can sense awareness, but awareness itself is not the mind. And the way that we know that is because awareness exists whether you have a human mind available or not. You might call a human mind or the brain an antenna for awareness where it can perceive it. But there's a lot of times where the human brain is not in a high level of awareness. It's just living inside of its repetitive conditioning. And so for most of the planet, I would argue that they're living not in awareness, but in a state of repetitive conditioning. And most of their life is lived in that repetitive conditioning. And that repetitive conditioning is creating a certain state of experience for them that is replicating itself, just like the repetitive patterns of the brain. It has long been studied that most of the words, most of the thoughts that you have within your brain are heavily repetitious. You actually say the same things to yourself over and over again. Think about how you tell stories. You tend to tell them in the same way. Similar cadences, similar emotions come up. It's like a repetition. Now, that's when you're aware of telling a story. Think about how many times you're unconsciously telling yourself stories of concern and worry and negativity and things of this nature. Okay? And so, yeah, intuitivemind.live. Go watch the testimonials. They're pretty fucking awesome, if I do say so myself. We get, even when I'm down, I go watch testimonials of what we're creating here. And I remember who I am. I remember what I'm committed to. I remember the impact that this work has on people. And it also gives me solace to know that as I pass on this work that was passed down to me, and I pass this down to other people, I then also know that they are making impact with other people in their life, whether they're talking about this work or not. They can certainly enhance impact by learning how to share and talk about this work without a doubt, but simply by being energetically aligned. When you have an energetically aligned person in any space, the space is just not the same. The facets of communication change, the facets of how we manifest change. Let me take a quick sip here. I feel like I'm losing my voice a bit. And so, yeah, some people here who are watching this live are saying in the chat box, like, I'm in love with awareness. And it's true. And it's so, awareness is like so close to you. It's as close as a breath. It's as close as the molecule that's sitting in front of your eye. And yet it's one of the least discovered things on our planet today. And again, it's not for a lack of trying on people's part. It's literally for a lack of negligence and for a lack of conditioning or commitment to awareness. And that's fine, because we're still a young species figuring all this stuff out. And some of us are just a little bit further ahead down the path, not better, not enhanced, not special, not anything like that. It was just like if you were an amazing artist in music and you played the violin for a year more than me, you would have a year more of that capacity than I would. Or maybe your level of commitment is different, right? And so if you're a little bit down the path, you always have something to share back with the people who are just getting started or who are not as far along as you are. And that's one of the things that we get to recognize as a human race, is that we all have the ability to tremendously make a difference with people in our lives. Because when you're exploring something and you're engaged in it and you're committed to it, you are putting yourself squarely on a path towards mastery. Now, you might not know that in this start, but anything you have commitment to, you are going to go from being, a fresh student to eventually a practitioner to eventually beginning to master that craft. And you can always share from where you are and share your novel experiences back with people who are interested or just getting going in that practice. And to them, you're going to seem like a monumental guru or genius. I had a mentor many years ago when I first got going in entrepreneurialism, and he would say to people who were just getting started, he's like, the only difference between me and you is time. And he was a multi-millionaire many times over. And I was like, there's a few more things different between us, and that's probably a few $1 million in the bank. But in retrospect, all he was saying was, I've committed to this longer than you. I have more wisdom and knowledge than you because of the commitment. And inherently, that level of commitment is really what makes anybody special, is their level of commitment to anything. When you see a great artist singing, dancing, playing music, they're there because of their level of commitment. I live with a guy named Sean. And when I found Sean in California, he lived with me for about 2.5 years. He then moved to New York City, and he worked at a big advertising firm that then got sold off. And after that, when it was all over, so anyway, he was a bartender making about $1,000 a week. Moved into my house. We started having some pretty transformational conversations. He started doing some transformational work. Long story short, he is now a world famous DJ, very, very big in the Afro house scene in Europe. He just played Coachella here, Sunset set at Coachella on the second weekend here, which is one of the biggest festivals, music festivals in the world. And to play Sunset set, for those of you guys that know, is a really, really special experience. And, that's what commitment can do. That's what this work can do. And that's really what I wanted to kind of parlay this conversation into, because a few years ago, prior to us really teaching a lot of energy work and healing work, because we weren't just in a place where we could teach it, we were new on that path as well. We had this distinction with our clients at the time, and we called them fear hunters. Okay. So what's a fear hunter? Well, a fear hunter, rather than somebody who's avoiding their fear, you can kind of probably imagine what that looks like, is somebody who identifies a fear and then moves towards it. And so we stopped using that distinction, and partially because that feels a bit masculine to me to continue to use just that verbiage. Not like toxic masculinity or anything, just masculine in nature. Excuse me. And so I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it, but it's a really good distinction or a tool that we can use to identify something. And what we want to continuously identify, because what is growth, right? What is growth? Growth is moving beyond where you were previously, right? If a plant is growing and it's coming out of the ground, it's continuously reaching up. It's taking up more space. If a child is growing, they can reach higher, right? They can see from different perspectives as they've gotten taller. I don't know if you guys remember what it was like when you were really little and you looked up at the dining room table, and, you never got that perspective anymore when you're an adult. You always look at everything kind of, at level or down. And so growth it's a shift in perspective based on expanding space. And so when we're doing strictly mindset work, there's maybe a way to identify where our growth opportunities are by identifying where we are frustrated and or confused, okay, or fearful. But fearful kind of lands in the more in the realm of emotion. And so we can still kind of say to use fear as a guidepost, because, even if I say I'm fearful, there's an experience I'm having internally that my mind is assessing as fear. And so my mind, naturally, anything that we don't like, the mind kind of veers off in the opposite direction. It's not conditioned to point at it and say, hey, let's sit with that. Let's take a look at that. It's like most of the time it's avoidance, or it's taking wild action, usually without any real thought, reactionary type of action, to try to create a different outcome that will then subside that experience, make it go away, built a nice little fortress around it. And then, of course, that fear, that overwhelm, that stress, that confusion, it always comes back because nothing was resolved there. And that's kind of the edge of what we saw, is even though you become a fear hunter, and we're expanding that, and it's kind of like Navy SEAL training, right? Like, why do they put people into really intense experiences in the military or the Army? It's because they know if they don't do that and that person ends up in an intense experience, then the fear will take over. And the person will freeze, or generally speaking, run away, or not be able to think properly or clearly in that moment. And so they might take some action that hurts them or other people. And certainly that's not what they're there for. And so same thing with, running into a burning building. If you haven't been conditioned to deal with heat, then the body naturally wants to move away from the discomfort. But firemen do the opposite. They're put into those situations so that they can think clearly, where others will go into a fight or flight response and then lose that capacity to be aligned and clear in thought and action. Okay, so that's kind of like defining the mind. Excuse me. But when it comes to our body and mind are not always in alignment about things. Sometimes we try to override what the body is doing, and then the body usually ends up punishing us in some way. And so you'll notice in our work, we don't really talk about one area or the other area. We really talk about both on a regular basis. Because over time, what we saw is both are absolutely necessary for living what we call, or what we perceive is as a holistic life as possible. I cannot simply just live in my body, because I live in a world where my mind interacts with this reality. And so we tried for a few years. We actually removed mindset work completely from what we did here at Satori Prime. We're like, it is irrelevant. It doesn't really create any healing. And then what we started seeing was people doing a lot of energetic clearing, transformational energetic work, healing somatic work, but they were looping. So they would come to us, they would do a session. We could feel that thing cleared from their system, and then it would repeat, and they would come back and they would heal the same rupture over and over again. It's like having a cut, watching it heal, and then cutting it open again, having a cut, watching it heal, and then cutting it open again. And so we're like, okay. So if we don't bring awareness to how the mind is perceiving reality and where it no longer wants to expand and begins to avoid, people are going to get stuck in these traps. And it got really clear that it wasn't just about one is better and the other one is worse, or vice versa. It was really about a holistic approach to, we are living in this, third and fourth density reality. We do have a mind and these five senses, and they're having an experience. We have this thing called awareness, and then we have this thing called an intelligent body. And every one of these areas, to some extent, has its own field of vision and experience that it's having. And so it became imperative to start talking about every one of them as almost like a completely separate class, and something that we get initiated in and have mastery with, and then also understanding the relationship between them and how they can work together so that we can get the best performance out of all of them simultaneously. Now, what brings it all together, as some of you guys are kind of, saying in the chat box here who are watching this live, is you're saying like, awareness has become my best friend. And it's true. You kind of want to take awareness as your lover. Because the one thing that remains constant in all of this stuff, even I think past our demise, if you want to think of it that way, and I mean our physical demise, is that awareness is here forever. And you, as an aware being, regardless of whether in this body or in another shape or form, will continue to have this awareness into an infinitum. And so, like, the one constant we have that we can potentially rely on is this awareness. And so, the area of study that kind of brings it all together, because awareness holds the body and awareness holds the mind. And the way that we can prove that is by going into awareness and seeing that we can perceive our body and we can perceive our mind and we can literally perceive anything through awareness. Anything that we pointed at, it can sit and perceive objectively and be with as we train ourselves to do that. And so if the mind's edges are like things like, call it frustration and confusion, I think those are the easiest places to find yourself, and like where you stop with the mind, that's your edge. And what's beyond that confusion and frustration, you generally speaking don't know. And so you would have to learn how to be able to sit with confusion and frustration without a reactive action to that, and allowing for that experience of confusion and frustration to unfold in order to pursue having a breakthrough and transformation in your life on a consistent basis. Said another way is, you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Okay, you could live a life of comfort and that would be fine. But and we all know people who live a life of comfort. And I mean, comfort in terms of not like they have wealth or money or all the health in the world, which is another potential form of comfort. But I've met people who have a lot of money and they don't seem particularly comfortable. They're actually quite agitated and don't have great relationships most of the time. And their health is inordinate because that's how they got the money. They had to deprioritize their relationships. They had to deprioritize their health. They made a calculated sacrifice or uncalculated sacrifice, and then they find themselves with what they thought that they wanted, only to usually find out that they didn't get what they wanted. Because without a holistic approach in any area of life that you desire to have something, what good is money without health? And what good is money if you don't have loving people around you to share it with? You will have the delusion of safety, through wealth. And I agree that probably having money is, quote, better than not having money in most circumstances. But there's plenty of poor countries on this planet, and when they go over there and they assess the levels of happiness, they seem to be significantly happier than westernized, civilized nations that have a lot of wealth and a lot of money, because they live simple lives. They don't have a lot of attachments. And if you want to find a happy human being, find a human being who is extraordinarily accepting and happy of what they already have. It's the happiest human is always the one that accepts the most. And so the agitations, right, in the mind, or again, this confusion, frustration, is what it hasn't accepted. It hasn't accepted this moment of agitation and frustration. It hasn't accepted its limitations. Another way to explore that through the mind is what you are critical of others and assured of yourself that you're right about. Okay? We all, to some degree, have to believe that we're right in our belief systems, because it would be kind of strange if we doubted ourselves endlessly. Oh my God, I don't know. Could I take another breath? Could I? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know if we would get anything done in this world. So there's a mechanism there that we kind of hold on to virtuously and righteously to what we believe is right all the time. And we need to understand that the paradox of that, of holding on to what is right, what you think is right, is also deterring you from growing. It's mostly deterring people from having wonderful relationships, by the way. Mostly deterring people from really going for it and building significant wealth in their life. Really anywhere where you feel like you have a lack, I would argue for you to go look at what you're holding on to as you believe is right. And maybe it's just something you believe about yourself. Yeah, that always happens to me. Oh, I'm unlucky. All this shenanigans of stuff that we tell ourselves. And we just say it like so matter of fact, like we absolutely know. There's that conversation like when you wash your car, the next day it rains. And you're like, see, every time I wash my car, it just rains. That's the kind of person I am. I'm just that unlucky guy. It rains when I wash my car. Do you know how many times that person has washed their car where it hasn't rained, by the way? But because of the conditioning of the mind, what they see only is the times that it rains after they wash their car. And so they build a book of evidence internally that says, see, it rains when I wash my car, even though if we historically probably looked at it, it more often than not probably does not rain. But they don't notice that. And so they hold on to like this virtue, this righteousness. And how many things do you think we do that to? About the people in our lives, about our own personality traits, about the way that the world is, about political systems, about the nature of things in general. And we adhere to these philosophies as if they're as real as the wall in front of you, which is also not so real, by the way. And so these are the curiosities that we need to sit inside of on a regular basis and really dismantle from the inside of the ego. What are these things that the mind holds on to? And in level 1 work that we do here, that's a mastery of. It's a practical tools that we give you, distinctions that you can work with to dismantle and rebuild the illusion of your mind as you see fit. Okay? That's really what it is. Because at the end of the day, the mind is a meaning-making machine, makes up stories, makes up meaning. And if we don't see that mechanism at work through our objective awareness, we will forever buy into the stories that we've told ourselves for a long time. Just like I did with my dad about not getting sick, right? And it's often when we say something like that, that the exact opposite happens. And there's a clue in there for you about the way that energy works. When we're creating something in the world, and again, something we talk about in different levels of the awareness effect about this phenomenology that's in the universe, and then how do you use it for your own personal advantage? How can you use that to grow? How can you use that to manifest? But you need to understand the phenomenology that's there in order to perceive it, to not get hooked by it as often. Certainly still going to get hooked once in a while because reality is complex. And then also, hey, if I let that go and I explore, what could happen, right? In the body, if we're going to take this conversation a bit deeper, in the body, it's really where people seem to have almost no awareness at all about what's happening. Most people are like rarely aware of the body and the energy that's inside of it until something is really wrong. Right? If people get terminally sick or they have a headache or a severe injury of some kind, generally speaking, then they'll start paying attention to their body. And at that point, it's usually, I don't want to say too late, but in some circumstances it is. And so the body has this whole other intelligence. And, I would say different than the mind, the body really can't be trifled with. The body really knows the truth. Like you can lie to yourself mentally and tell yourself whatever you want to tell yourself. But if your body hurts, doesn't matter how much you tell it to stop hurting, it will continue to hurt because it's telling you the truth. Something is wrong. So, you might get a terrible diagnosis and you go, I don't have that. You do. The body's telling you do. And then we have this whole like mind over matter situation, which as far as I'm concerned, I've rarely, if ever, seen anybody actually mind over matter because the simulation that we're living in is so wildly alluring to get involved with. It's so well done that it's hard to disconnect from because we were born with the glasses of this matrix on our face. We don't even know what the other realities look like. I'm guessing that that's where we're probably going. I had the somewhat pleasure of trying Apple Vision Pro, their new device from Apple, on Wednesday. I had played with it for a good hour and a half or so. And let me just tell you this. Holy shit, that thing. It is incredible. I don't want one at all. I basically don't see a use case for it in any practical way. I'm sure they will develop it over time. And I will say this, I'm not an Apple fanboy at all. And yet I'm super proud of that company for at least trying to develop a product that doesn't have all its edges polished yet, which is so Apple to do. But it's a real kind of beta product. Having said that, impressive is an understatement. It is simply one of the most novel technological experiences that I have ever had. The simulation is incredible. like nothing I've ever experienced before. And yet, if you were born with those glasses glued to your face, and that's all you knew from the moment you were born, your mind would be convinced that that is what reality is, not knowing that you could just take off that pair of glasses and experience the world in a completely different way. And so the body, on the other hand, is having a different experience. And with the body, you know, discomfort, again, is something that we normally bypass, we avoid, or we don't even know how to sense it. Because discomfort rarely shows up as a big experience first. It's always very subtle in the body first. And this, again, is why we want to bring awareness and attunement to our physical body and our energetic body, which are actually two different things, and our mind, because from all those places, we can begin sensing the very subtle nature of our physical body, the very subtle nature of our energetic body, and the very subtle nature of our mental body. And really start understanding them from the direct experience that they are having in their nature, right? And so there are all sorts of little things pinging your body all the time. We are experiencing our reality in a specific way, and there's all sorts of energies flowing through what we call air. All sorts of stimuluses that are hitting the mind and being sent down as signals to the nervous system. All sorts of environmental impacts that our body has to deal with, right? From chemicals and bacteria and viruses. And again, I think all these things need a complete reframe in how we've thought about them in the past, and really to start understanding that our environment is living in complete cohesion and cooperation with us. Even when we get sick, all that is telling you, it's basically telling your body is that something is out of alignment, because we've all been around sick people and not gotten sick. So it's not assured that when you get bacteria or viruses within you that everyone gets sick. It basically means that when your body falls out of alignment, it's much easier for you to get impacted by those things. But again, our environment must have some kind of communication network that is speaking to our biology and our neurology and saying, hey, this is what needs to change in your system in order to evolve better so the species can continue. Clearly, you know, we find evidence of animals that were here millions of years ago that look totally different because they were adapted to a very different environment. And then those animals continued in different ways or died off or whatever it is, right? We're not exactly sure how all that works. We make these great assumptions. So if you guys think we've apexed on evolution, that's insanity. Our environment is constantly telling us how our DNA needs to change and mitigate itself in order to reproduce a species that's always tolerable to the environment that it's living in. And if we can't evolve then to our environment, then of course, yeah, we're going to have problems. And so we want to look within ourselves at this process of evolution is really happening in a moment by moment basis. We think of it in like a millions of years type of process, and there's probably truth to that, right, as well. But on the level of quantum, on the level of awareness, this stuff is happening at a moment by moment basis. There's a direct feedback loop going into your system that's telling you something. And part of the reason I really want you guys at our live events, and certainly going beyond that, and not just being a student of this work, but becoming a practitioner and master of this work, is so that you can be aware of that at all times. So you don't have to wait until the big things come, the headaches and the diseases and the relationships coming to an end, or just troublesome, heavy experiences that often happen to people when they're not keenly aware of the subtle changes happening in their system that they could be acknowledging right now. And at the end of the day, as far as I can tell, the skill that we all really, really want to acquire, it's hard to name it, but I'll just say is really just surrendering to what is. I'm sure most of you guys come here to feel better. You want more well-being in your life. You want more connection. You want more safety. You want more love. Yeah, well, all those things are available when you can surrender to what's happening in your life right now and fully embrace from an empathetic, loving place that whatever is happening really is, and in somewhat of a natural perfection for your perfect experience. Anything other than that will create suffering and hardship in your life. That's just what's up. Anything other than fully embracing and accepting and surrendering to what's so will bring suffering into your life. And so the question is there suffering? And I think we would all probably just say yes to that because it's easy to find evidence for people suffering. But I'm saying, is there suffering outside of perception? Is there suffering outside of perspective? Because I notice that as my perception and perspective changes, where I suffer or how I suffer has greatly diminished. And so suffering seems to be as malleable as anything else. Your ideas can make you suffer. Pain in the body can make you suffer. You know, I remember sitting in I sat in 10 days of silent meditation a number of years back, which was one of the best experiences of my whole life, to be honest. It was really, really wonderful for me. It's very challenging for a lot of people. And it could be that if I went back and did that, it would be very challenging this time, although I really enjoyed that level of peace and the sensitivity that came along with it. But I remember it was about day 3 or 4. I was meditating maybe 14 up to 16 hours a day while we were in that practice, which, you know, how do you know what happens when you meditate that long? We also weren't allowed to speak for 10 days. How do you know what happens to the body if you don't articulate words all the time and manifest and create with them? I didn't know. I was curious. And I remember around maybe day 3 or 4, you know, the first 3 days, like I don't sit very comfortably with crossed legs. I know most Western people don't because we're in chairs so much. It was like riddled with pain, you know, just getting up after an hour of meditation, hour and a half of meditation, sitting upright, this, that, the other. It's like just hard to even walk. And then somewhere around day 4-ish, don't remember exactly when, this awareness begins to develop. This awareness that's not of the body, but is aware of the body. It's what Ken Wilber, I think, calls the face you had before you had this face. And from this place, suddenly you're just witnessing experience. And so while the awareness can certainly acknowledge that the body is having pain, the awareness itself is experiencing no pain at all. And so as the days progressed, I suddenly found myself sitting in 3-4 hours of meditation at a time. No problem at all. Not even moving an inch. Now, did the body change that rapidly in that period of time? No, it may have softened a little bit from just not adding tension. Because, you know, when you're in pain, you kind of try to hold yourself upright a little bit better. But what you're really doing is adding more tension into the system. So maybe the body's a little bit softer. That happens on psychedelics as well. Like the tissue in the body just gets softer. I can always sit almost flat with my legs on the ground in a cross-legged position on psychedelics. And so suddenly I notice, I'm like, whoa, I can acknowledge pain, but I'm actually not experiencing pain. The awareness is there and I'm completely separate from this body. Now I can zoom back into the body and go into the pain and really let it expand and be like, whoa, that's super intense, but then just as easily zoom back out. And that's what we want to recognize. We have that skill right now. You don't have to wait until the body's gone to realize that you're the awareness that just landed into this body and chose to embody, because there's something to experience in the physical realm that can't be experienced when you don't have a nervous system. But what a profound thing to recognize before death, and then to cultivate that level of awareness so that you can live in it on a regular basis. Now, I can't tell you that I'm living at that level of awareness because it took 14, 16 hours, the level of sensitivity in my body. I was in complete control of the way electricity was moving in my body, as crazy as that sounds, but at will. And you guys can, I still have these videos on YouTube of me explaining it. I look like a crazy person because I'm just so blown away at what I'm experiencing in that moment. I mean, it was like I could commune with a tree, not like talk, but absolutely feel everything that tree was feeling. I remember just like I would be able to move energy in my body at will. And I realized that the reason our when you get the chills and your hands and your hairs are standing up, what's really happening is there's just more electricity moving there, and hairs stand up when you bring static electricity next to them. I'd never realized that up until that moment, because I was controlling electricity in my body and watching hairs just stand up and fall down and stand up and fall down. I was controlling all sorts of mechanisms in my body, like directly aware of how to use them to unbelievable degrees. It was just really mind-blowing. I could feel energy like it was a solid object. If I wanted to have claws on my hands like Wolverine, I could absolutely feel claws. If I wanted to wear a cape on my back, I could feel a cape moving around. It was just control. Now, within about 2 or 3 days of leaving there, the level of my control like diminished by about 80%. So it took, at that time, 14 to 16 hours of meditation daily, eating very minimally, and not talking to maintain that level of state. I don't think that's feasible in the world that we're currently in. Nonetheless, definitely pointed at some aspects of our true nature, or at least what I was able to experience through my nature. And I share all that because regardless of if you can't sit around and meditate 16 hours a day, and most of us can't, it doesn't mean that we don't have the capacity to build those skills over time. And that to me is why we want to do intensive experiences. That's why I'm inviting you to a 2-day experience or to do any of our programs, because they're intensives and they're immersive experiences. And when you immerse yourself, you will find that this is the quickest way to learn. This is how we incubate you, and this is how we accelerate your transformation. Because when you have an experience like that, you then know that that's available to you. A person who's overweight and huffing and puffing everywhere they're walking doesn't know the freedom to walk up a flight of stairs without having to catch their breath. A person who's constantly living in anger doesn't know what peace feels like. And most of us don't know what well-being feels like. We have a concept of well-being. We have a concept of peacefulness. We don't have a direct experience with those things. And so the direct experience is far, 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 far more valuable than thinking about that thing as a concept and trying to get an understanding of it. Honestly, who gives a shit? I mean, I enjoy philosophy. I enjoy all sorts of banter and, looking at things in interesting ways and playing with reality and all that kind of stuff. But that's all it is. It's a game. And that game doesn't increase the quality of your life. It's just a game that you play mostly to avoid actually having a direct experience with something. Today, I value much more people who have the courage to go have a direct experience. Not tell me that you're uncomfortable. Let's sit with the discomfort. Don't think about what you're afraid of. Let's sit with the fear. Now I'm impressed. Your courage is what impresses me. Your commitment to transformation and sitting with the frustration or the confusion or the stress or the overwhelm, not trying to run away from it, not trying to create a life that protects you from it or you think will protect you from it. But you finally say, I'll sit with that. That's what impresses me. Your courage impresses me. When you go sit in a 10-day silent meditation, that's what you can expect. Because the moment you slow down, the moment you're not active, the moment you're not staring at social media or doing in your life, is the moment everything that you were trying to run away from by doing those things catches up with you. And it catches up with you, not just in your mental state, but in the experience that you're having within your body. And a lot of us have been running away from some dark stuff for a long time. All sorts of abuses, all sorts of traumas. And I get it. It is not an easy ask to ask somebody to sit with what they've spent a lifetime avoiding. And you're welcome to do that. You really are. You are welcome to continue to run and be fucking exhausted. But the most counterintuitive thing is to sit there and actually be with it. And what we've learned over the years is, and I think this is even the fallacy of Vipassana and 10 days and stuff like that, is it's devoid of connection. You're still sitting by yourself. And that's what I've really learned, and something that vastly makes what we do here unique is we're not asking you to sit by yourself. We will teach you the personal practices that you have to do. What are the things that I can do on a daily basis to improve my life? How do I sit with stuff? How would I be with it? But then it's also understanding, how do I work with others one-on-one in a community setting, in a group setting, that elicits a healing response? And that was a huge eye-opening experience for Elon and I over the last 7-8 years, is really recognizing, fuck, none of us should be doing this on our own. This is insane that we ever thought that that was okay. Left to our own devices, you will continue to get mostly what you've gotten before in the past. And for those of you guys who've been around us for a really, really long time, you know that to be true now too. It's like you just think about how you used to approach personal development. Just trying to figure it all out. Trying to deal with every challenge you had, hidden in a way and shameful, and blaming yourself for having that personality trait or that identity, which felt so real and so solid. And then you started working with people and you're like, holy shit, once I've gotten over the fact that I'm not a broken human being and I can actually reveal myself to other people, even if I don't talk, just by sitting with them while I'm in an experience, some magical, magical things can happen. I don't do anything on my own today. And just like I said, it's an act of courage to sit with something. I think it's an act of courage to continuously understand that I cannot go through this life on my own. Human beings were not built to be on their own. We are pack creatures. It's not like a shark that's born and then mama swims away and the shark just has to figure out how to survive on its own. That's not how we work. We are pack social mammals. We've thrived and grown in tribes. And our biology refuses to live in isolation. In fact, it's a complete breakdown of our psychology when we do. So there's some deep connection, and I would even extend that connection to nature and the cosmos for humanity, because we are multidimensional beings, and that's something that we don't talk about, is the degree of intelligence that's actually streaming through the system that's far beyond the capacity that we've come to realize ourselves inside of. I just want to point out on our planet right now, that we can go see with our own eyeballs, are monolithic structures everywhere, underground and above ground, because ever since LIDAR, they are finding pyramids and structures under the sea and under the land everywhere. There are hundreds of pyramids all around Egypt, PS, not just the well-known ones. And to this day, we can't figure out how they built those things. And it's clear, at least to me, that they weren't built through any sort of machine or technology that we have currently on our planet right now. I would say there's, in my purview, spiritual technology that we have yet to rediscover, and we're probably moving in that direction. So what we have is evidence of wild intelligence on our planet that we are far from understanding right now, which also tells me that this has happened before in some way, shape, or form. And we are far from the apex awareness that most of us believe that we have become to be. And like everything else, it's repeating itself kind of in a slightly different way this time. And hopefully as a species, we make better choices this time, but we can't do that if we're living in a state of fear and confusion and frustration all the time. And so it's imperative for those of you guys that are here, and I know a lot of you guys are in line with this now, but for those of you guys who are new and hearing this maybe for the first time, is that you do your interpersonal work and you learn how to sit with those parts. Because as you learn how to sit with those parts, you can retrain other people in your life, not by force, but literally by your presence, how to be with it as well. You will be a force for alignment and groundedness for everyone in your life. And intuitively, they will learn from your system, because we intuitively learn from each other. My children intuitively learn by being with me. They watch me, certainly, actions I do, this, that, the other, but it's my energy. If I'm pissed off and groggy in my system, my children mirror that. Even if I try to hide actions from them that are both groggy and pissed off, they will mirror it. That's what we do. We speak through energy. Every animal does. Everything in nature does. It's how it's all organized. And so if you're the type of person that wants to see a transformation on our planet take hold, and I certainly do, over the next few generations, somebody's got to go first and stop avoiding what we've been conditioned to avoid, what they have told you not to look, or to try to become some uniform type of human being that's acceptable to society. That's ridiculous. Instead of exploring the majesty and unfoldment that lives within you, that is like your divine right to be an intuitive being that lets forth come through whatever comes through you. That's freedom. That's liberation. And so, we talked about the mindset, we talked about the body, we talked about awareness, and it really comes down to learning practices that allows you to sit with those things in a really productive way. I don't mean sit there and mull it over and blame yourself and shame yourself into some, fucking pity party where you just feel like shit all the time. And then you're like, well, I'm looking at it. That's what Guy told me to do. That's not what I'm saying. And that's why you get to come to programs, because that's where we do the direct work, so you can directly experience what it is that I'm describing here in language that is really indescribable. It has to be felt. Doing work, this work, any work, is like love. You feel it when it's there, you know it, and then you try to talk about it and you're like, that's not it. That's talking about love. That's not love. It's a concept of love. It's not love. It's an idea of love. But that's not love. And most of us, when we try to go find somebody to love us, we come with our concepts and ideas of love, and we don't just open and realize that sometimes you meet somebody who really wants to love you, but you're so uncomfortable in your own fucking conditioning that you won't allow yourself to be loved or love them back. And then you go, that's just not the right person for me. So the real work is learning how to love yourself in those experiences. And what I've learned is I need somebody else there with me to reflect back to me when I'm in those places, how I can love myself. And it's an energetic experience. And it's one that we all get to hopefully experience one day, because if you do that, the sense of well-being, the accelerated pattern of transformation, your sense of connection to other people, your sense of support, which has everything to do with your ability to manifest in this world, all those things can change, and they just change on their own. They naturally change. You don't have to work on it. You just have to show up and sit with those aspects of you that you think are unlovable or frustrating or confused, and stop making them wrong and start making them your lover, so you can learn from them, because that's all they've ever tried to be, is something to protect you and something to teach you. And if you start taking those opportunities, then you can accelerate your transformation in ways that will just blow everybody else's mind. So again, we'd love to have you at the next live event. If you want to take your game up to the next level, and put it in the box for you guys right now, is at very minimum, join our level 1 work. You can go to soulsandseekers.com/level 1. It's by far the highest value to get started with us. It's an 8-week program, group coaching for a year. You get an Intuitive Mind Live ticket for free. I mean, it's a silly offer not to take up. It's only $997. I know if for some of you guys it seems like a lot of money. I'm telling you, it's not for the level of transformation that's sitting there with you. This transformation you get to take with you for the rest of your life. It's not a pair of jeans that in a few years' time is going to rip up and not be something you can wear. It is something that will impact every area of your life, every relationship, how you work, your career, your mental, emotional, and physical health. And if you could find me any product that continues to become more